show you one slide, but the agenda is we have Michael Kowalsky here. He is a principal program manager here in Microsoft and one of the fathers, let's say, for Semantic Link Labs. Very, very nice Python library, which will easy up your life much. And next we have then Pascal, who will talk about Power BI Embedded, next gen analytical solution. And I will cover at the end this time what's new in Power BI and Fabric, so that we have Michael at the beginning talking about Semantic Link. One question again is to provide some feedback for the user group. We're collecting it, analyzing it to see how we can improve, especially in the next year, to see is the day okay, is the time okay, or whatever. Just feel free to provide the feedback, and I will also show the current result to discuss a little bit with you what we can do next Thursday. That's it. So with that, I'm very, very happy to see Michael. Hello, Michael. Welcome to our community. And I would say the stage is yours. Feel free to kick off.
Great. Thank you so much. Great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. And let's kick it off. So just to, if people have questions, feel free to put them in the chat or interrupt me. Happy to take questions as we go. If you feel that things are lagging behind, then maybe we'll start to pause the questions, but I'd like to take questions as we go. So yeah, my name is Michael Kowalsky, and I work at Microsoft in the Fabric Customer Advisory team. And I've worked a lot regarding helping customers optimize their semantic models. Spent a lot of time developing semantic models, going very deep in that. And that kind of led me down the road of using Tablet Editor quite a bit. And then eventually creating a bunch of C# scripts for Tablet Editor for automating various things through that tool. About a year ago, after Fabric came out, I started looking into Semantic Link as a potential avenue for automation. And I guess that leads us to where we are today, talking about Semantic Link Labs. So quick agenda for today. We will first introduce Semantic Link and then introduce Semantic Link Labs. Then we'll go over some demos of some highlighted features of Semantic Link Labs. And then we'll talk about some relatively new features that have been introduced. So what is Semantic Link? Semantic Link is a Python library to be run inside of Fabric notebooks. It was originally intended for data scientists. It turns out that it's really quite useful for Power BI folks as well, specifically Power BI admins and developers. So with regard to Semantic Link, some of the primary scenarios that it's useful for Power BI folks are these list functions regarding semantic model metadata. So you have, for example, like list tables, list measures, list columns, really for any object in a semantic model. So for example, list columns will show you all the columns in your semantic model and their properties. List tables show you all the tables in your semantic model and all their properties. List measures, the same thing, shows you all the DAX for all the measures. So what you do with this is kind of up to you, but now you have just quick and easy access to this metadata. One use case pretty naturally is for documentation. If you want to document, all of your semantic models using these functions, it's really never been easier. All of these functions return data frames, which is essentially like a Python way of saying like a temporary table. You can say the table down to your lakehouse, and pretty quickly you can build like an automated documentation for your semantic model using these convenient functions in Semantic Link. Semantic Link also offers you the opportunity to be able to run DAX inside of a notebook. This is primarily intended for like data scientists to be able to either run DAX or run these functions, which are kind of wrappers around DAX to make it easier, even if you don't know DAX. So that's pretty nice. If you're a developer of semantic models, obviously you do know DAX, so you can use this to do that. You can also run DMVs and XMLA and Tinsel commands as well inside of a notebook. So as you can probably start to see, you have some of these foundational pieces here, which can then be used in various automation scenarios. So Semantic Link kind of gives you that base foundation. And that takes us to Semantic Link Labs. So Semantic Link Labs is an open sourced Python library that's available on Microsoft's GitHub. We'll send a link into the chat for those of you who want to take a look. So it's an extension of Semantic Link with, I say 300 functions, additional functions. It's actually, I think, 398 now, so almost 400 additional functions on top of what Semantic Link already has. So the question comes up a lot, like, which one should I use, Semantic Link or Semantic Link Labs? And by creating Semantic Link Labs, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. So there's everything in Semantic Link Labs is something that's new that wasn't or is not in Semantic Link. Maybe a few things have been added since then, but it's all net new. So the answer to the question is that you use them together. Part of the beauty about Semantic Link, Semantic Labs is that there's auto authentication. So you're in a Fabric notebook, so it knows who you are, and you don't have to worry about that, annoying pop-up window and the authenticator app put in that code. It knows who you are, so when you run a function, it takes into account and shows you whatever you have access to. So it's just, it's meant for like automation, so it's just very easy. You have programmatic access to various Fabric artifacts. Most of the effort is around semantic models, basically because my experience is in that domain, but also around reports, lakehouses, and warehouses. For those of you who may have used Power BI or Fabric APIs, I assume there's quite a few of you who haven't before, and maybe the reason that you haven't is because it's actually quite cumbersome to connect to them and set it all up. Like you have to go through authentication, you have to set up a C# application or PowerShell script. It's not simple. And if you want to combine different APIs together, it gets even more complicated. So what we've done here in Semantic Link and Semantic Link Labs is that we've created these wrapper functions that to call those APIs, you just call this function. You don't even realize you're calling the API. It just happens all for you behind the scenes. So now people who previously were not technically savvy enough to call an API can use these wrapper functions because they're more for humans to use as opposed to APIs in general, which are really meant for machines to use. I guess I'm not as like calling technical people machines, but I think you know what I mean. So, so now these are just so much more accessible to people, and you'll see that throughout the demos. For those of you familiar with semantic modeling, you may be familiar with the tabular object model, or TOM. It's the API which behind the scenes conducts all of the changes whenever you make a change to a semantic model. So this tabular object model is available in Semantic Link Labs with over 100 functions to make that easier to either make changes to your model programmatically or to view your model's metadata programmatically. And the point I want to emphasize here about Semantic Link Labs is that you do not need to be a Python expert. In fact, not so long ago, I didn't know anything about Python. And I've built this with the intention of serving both communities. If you know Python, obviously you can probably go much further. But even if you don't know Python, like I'm talking about, basically nothing, you can still get a ton of value from this. All these complicated things have been reduced to simple functions. It's essentially like plug and chug. You're back to middle school math. You just plug in a few parameters and click play, and go from there. So for those of you who are saying, I don't know Python, so it's not for me, like it absolutely can be and should be. So what's the goal of Semantic Link Labs? So first off, want to make things that are highly technically challenging for developers and admins incredibly simple. And I hope throughout the demos that you'll see that that hopefully we're accomplishing that. The Power BI and Fabric communities have, like our customers have quite the insatiable appetite for new features, and the product team can only move at such a speed. Through this library, we're able to release additional features and new things that customers want. So you have them in your hands today, and then we're actually able to, from as you use it today and give us the feedback on how it is, when we actually build some of these things into the product, we can do it in a more sophisticated and intelligent way, having that feedback. And lastly, simply just to showcase the power of Fabric notebooks. In my opinion, notebooks are the most powerful piece of Fabric in that they can control really everything else. So it's almost like that octopus where it has all these tentacles and can manipulate all these different artifacts. So it's I think it's pretty amazing, and it shows the kind of unified system that Fabric is. So before we get into the demos, just want to take you to GitHub here, and I'll paste the link into the chat in case it hasn't been done already. Okay. So this is the home of Semantic Link Labs on GitHub, and as I mentioned, all the code is open source, so you can come in here and see the code behind all the functions if you so desire. Really important, can't stress it enough, is when you come in here, you want to use it, definitely read the documentation. So this step is often overlooked to the dismay of the user. So let's not forget that. So if we come in here, we see that all the functions are documented. The functions here in red are in the main package, and we have additional sub-packages with additional functions. As you can see here, you have a description of the function, all the parameters, and if it returns, either a data frame or a string or whatever it returns. So this is very important for getting started. Additionally, if before you get into the functions, because there's almost 400, it's probably easy to be overwhelmed. A good place to start is this featured scenarios. So you can come in here and browse through this list and see what perks your interest. Something here may be more applicable to you, so you can just click on the link, and it'll take you either to a helper notebook or to the function itself that does that. This is a bit easier to digest for people, I think, than just looking at all the functions. So this doesn't cover like all the functions, but it's featured scenarios. So, and we'll be going over some of these today. Definitely not all of them. There's way too much to cover in one call here. So another way to get started is these helper notebooks. So if you click on the link here, it will take you to these helper notebooks. So you can click on any one of these, and you'll have this notebook which you can download, put into your workspace, and it has the code set up so that you can get started much faster for doing, in this case, working with the tabular object model. And there's different notebooks for these different types of activities. To make it even easier, instead of downloading all those manually and trying to figure out how to import them into your workspace, You could simply just copy this code, run it in your notebook, and it will download. It will load all those notebooks, those helper notebooks, into your workspace, so you don't do it manually. And this is actually using Semantic Link Labs to help you learn Semantic Link Labs. And obviously, like, all of this stuff is optional. Like, you don't have to do it. It's just going to be useful for you. What's mandatory is whenever you run Semantic Labs in your notebook, you have to install it. So this is the code to install it. Copy and paste it in. Then once you've installed it, you're going to want to load in and import these libraries. So this code will do that. So these two steps here are mandatory. Everything else is optional. Obviously, reading the instructions and using the helper notebooks will certainly help you along the way. And one more thing here is that you're going to want to check out also these releases. So if you click on releases, you'll see all the releases in the history of Semantic Link Labs. So you can see, what's come out and what's available as of the most recent versions. And just check back here because we're making releases all the time. Okay, let's get into the demos. So actually, I can see some folks. So maybe who here has is developing semantic models? Raise your hand. And you've who here has used Tab Editor? Have you used Tab Editor's BPA, Best Practice Analyzer? Have you used the rules that we published through Microsoft's GitHub? Yeah. Okay. Good. That's great. So I'm very glad that you've been using that, and definitely continue to use it. This is an alternative that you can use as well. If you for those customers who are not able to use third-party tools, now you have this available inside of a Fabric notebook. So, and if you don't want to leave Fabric to have that experience, you can now have it inside of Fabric. So by default, the same rules which we made available for Tab Editor are available here. So again, you don't have to know Python, right? All you do is you call a function, you specify the model name, the workspace name, and within a few seconds, you have the results, which are categorized for you. You see all the violations and of what severity they are. You can hover over a particular rule and see a description as to, it gives more context for that rule. And you can click on these links for the violations, and that will take you to a website either by Microsoft or by an MVP that gives you more context as to why that rule is important and what's the value for following it. So, for those of you who are currently using this in Tab Editor, you're thinking, okay, but I already have this, so what's the point? Can we do something different? So the answer is yes. So one thing that you have here is you have a parameter called extended. If you set that equals to true, it'll actually save down Vertipac analyzer statistics to your model as annotations and read those and run additional rules leveraging those statistics against your model. So for example, if you have a model that has a table that has 1 billion rows and it's in import mode, it's not partitioned, it probably would behoove you to partition that to get better processing performance. So looking at model metadata, there's no way to actually be able to figure that out. But through Vertipac Analyzer statistics, you actually are. So the rules here incorporate that if you say extend equals true, and that will allow you to analyze your model even better than just through metadata. What else can we do that's new? So I gave this session some time ago, and a user said, hey, I like this BPA, but I want to be able to view these rules in Spanish. Maybe someone doesn't speak English. They want to be able to leverage this as well. So figured, can we do that? And with Python, you can do literally anything. So now we have a parameter called language, and we can translate these rules, the descriptions, and the categories into any language. I'm giving you some examples here, but any language that you would want to translate this into, you can translate it into. Here we've done into Swedish. We can put in Japanese. So I actually, for Tabular Editor's rules, I actually had 3 people from Microsoft and the community translate the rules manually into Italian, Spanish, and Japanese. And it was really, time-consuming and burdensome for those folks. And I was happy to inform them that they don't need to do that anymore. And not only do we have those 3 languages covered, we have literally all the languages covered. So you talk about accessibility. Now this is accessible to everybody, whether you speak English or not. So how can we kick this up another notch? So a customer came to me and said, I have not just one semantic model, but I have 6,000 semantic models across 12,000 workspaces. How do I figure out of those models, which are the most important ones to focus on that have the most offensive violations according to this BPA? And you could sit here and run this 6,000 times, but that probably wouldn't be the best use of your time. We need to automate it. So that's why I created this function, run model BPA bulk, where you can input not the semantic model name, but either a workspace, a list of workspaces, or none, which will actually scan all the workspaces you have access to, all the models in all those workspaces, and save the results down. Instead of being in a visual, like you saw in the previous slide, it'll save it down to a delta table in your lakehouse. So let's see it in action. Here we're just doing one workspace, so it's analyzing all the models in the workspace, and it saves it down to this delta table here in the lakehouse. And that has these different things, not just the violations, but it also has things like the capacity, also configured by, so it shows you who's the actual owner of that particular semantic model, so you know who to contact if something is particularly wrong. And you have a run ID and timestamp, so whenever you run this, it appends this data and adds a new run ID, so you can actually see historically how things are improving or regressing over time. We could have stopped here, because now you have your data and you can analyze it, right? But we can do even better than that. We have 2 additional functions. This first function will dynamically generate a direct lake semantic model based on this delta table. And that model can then be used to analyze these results. So that's done. Now, the second one will dynamically generate a report based on the template based on that semantic model that we can then use to actually analyze this visually. So let's go back to our workspace, refresh it, and we see that we have 2 new artifacts. We have model BPA semantic model and model BPA report. And those are the 2 that were generated dynamically based on those previous 2 functions. Open up the report, and here we can see the results of our scan. We scanned one workspace, which had 11 models. We have some 1,200 violations, and we can see across the different models which ones had which violations. This first view is more of a high-level view for looking at across your workspaces and across your models. The second view here is more for looking into a particular model and seeing specific violations. This is just a kind of template to get you started. You can obviously change this report as you want to, or create your own report if so desired. Just something to get you started along the way. And the beauty about this is because the model that was generated dynamically that this report is based on is in direct lake mode. So whenever you run that run model BPA bulk, it will put the results into that delta table and load it into the model and report automatically without having to refresh it because it's in direct lake mode. So once you set up the model and report, you're done. And there's no maintenance required. You just have to run the run model BPA bulk whenever you want to, come back to the report and see the results. It'll all just flow through automatically. That's how direct lake works. So I kind of mentioned, maybe saw this coming, but I mentioned Vertipac statistics before. So we can actually run Vertipac Analyzer and get that same information inside of a notebook. We don't have to leave Fabric to have that information. Obviously, you can still do this using DAX Studio or Tab Editor 3, but you have it here inside of a notebook. So you can see all this information, the same information you would see. One difference here is that you're looking at this information kind of just as you would in other tools, and it's static. But wouldn't it be interesting to actually be able to save this down and potentially even track the statistics over time? So there's actually an export parameter in this function. If you call export equals table, similar to the run model BPA bulk, it will actually export this information as delta tables in your lakehouse. And every time you run it, it'll append with a new run ID and new timestamp. So you can even configure your models to save this information down into that delta table over time and see how your models are growing or shrinking according to the business changing, and be able to make decisions about your model and about, say, even capacity sizes even better. It's nice to be able to have this as a static view, but to be able to actually save it down and manipulate it and see it over time, I think is even more valuable. So who here in the room has tried to translate a semantic model's metadata? I see 2 folks, 3 folks. Okay. Have you succeeded? Oh, okay.
Not so good, but this is a pain topic here in Switzerland, as you can imagine, with 4 main languages and English on top.
Yeah. So I applaud you for trying. It is not your fault that you did not succeed, or you kind of half succeeded. That's not your fault. It's just too darn difficult. Like, it is a manually labor intensive. I mean, you're literally like a bricklayer. It is a lot of, work, manual work that is not interesting and honestly should not be done by a human. And now it doesn't have to be. So here we have a new function called translate semantic model. We specify the model name and the language we want to translate into. We can either put the language name, say like Italian or Chinese or Japanese, or we can put the language code. Either one's fine. And the same thing with the model BPA. Here I put language codes. IT-IT is Italian. ZH-CN is Chinese. This will translate the semantic model metadata looking at tables, columns, measures, hierarchies, levels, and their names, descriptions, and display folders, and translate them into all those languages. This is not overwriting current metadata. It's not overwriting the column name, for example. It's going into the translation properties inherent in semantic model definition. So the infrastructure was already there, just was difficult to do because who was going to translate a model with 100 tables and 1,000 measures into different languages? Like it would take you to the end of time to do that for one language. So let's see how it works. We just click play.
Short
like
question
that.
there.
Yes. Question, yes.
I've worked on translations quite extensively, and what I'm wondering, which components exactly are translating? Just the translations which you also have in Tabular Editor, or can you go further than that?
The translations that Tabular Editor shows are all the translations available in the semantic model, like Tom, the properties. So you have tables, columns, measures, hierarchies, and levels. Within those, you have the name of the object, description, and display folder. No display folders for tables or levels. Those are the properties which can be translated. Yep.
But you wouldn't have stuff like slicers or
this is just for the model, not for the report.
Okay, good.
Yep, just for the model, not for the report. The report does not have the infrastructure like the model does. So the report is a different problem. But as you'll see here, if you have a report title which you didn't edit and you didn't change, those will actually automatically translate into the new language. So I'll show you here. But so all it's do is come into the report, and you just go to the URL and specify ampersand language equals, in this case, it-it will give us Italian. So as we can see here, the report titles, because I didn't modify them, are also in Italian. The tables, measures, columns, hierarchies, levels, they're also all in Italian. We can now change it to Chinese. We specify ZH-CN. And here we are. We go to modify the model. And we see everything is in Chinese, just like that. So if you want everything in French, French, German, Swiss, whatever you want, a few seconds and you're done. Is this perfect? Probably not, but it'll get you 90-something% of the way there. So those last few percent should be, easy to get to. But in my opinion, any company that has people using the model reports that speak different languages, which I think is almost every company probably, if they don't use this, they're really at a disservice to their users, right? It's so easy, anyone can do this. So there's really no reason not to use it.
Michael, probably two quick questions on that. The first one, how does the translation happen? Do we call the Cognitive Services API behind the scene, or how exactly do we translate?
Yeah, so currently it's leveraging the Synapse ML library, which is a translation library built by Microsoft. So it takes in all the metadata, that like all the column names, table names, measure names, etc., descriptions, sends it to the service, gets back to translations, and populates that in the metadata.
And is it possible that I add my own translations to it as well, or we take it as is?
This will overwrite any existing translations in the model. We could make further iterations that allow you to customize that. You can also add your own manually into the model. This is just a way of doing it like an automated version of it, because doing it manually, you're lucky if you get to this, right? Like it's just way too much work, right? So this will get you much further down the road, and then you can do those little tweaks to make it perfect afterwards. But you know, it's like saying I'm going to walk to China. Like this is the airplane that gets you to the airport, right? You know, you can then figure out the taxi ride to your hotel. So
makes sense. Thanks.
Cool. So I mentioned there was all these wrapper functions for this PowerPaint and Fabric APIs. Whether you're familiar with them or not, these APIs are actually really useful for doing quite a few things. Whether you're technical or not, they're actually quite useful. And the problem is they're difficult to use. So these wrapper functions make it extremely easy. So I want to give a demo of one that's more complicated. And you're thinking, export report, how could that be complicated? You're just exporting reports as a PDF. Should be easy, right? Well, not so much. Behind the scenes, this function actually calls 3 APIs. If you want to set that up by yourself, it's a ton of work. Now, as you can see, it's plug and chug, extremely simple. Like I said, middle school math. You put the report name, the export format, PDF, the file name that you want to save it as, the workspace in which it exists in this case, it's the same workspace that the notebook is running in. It'll save the file to your lakehouse. Here it is. We can go to the OneLake File Explorer, sync from OneLake, and the file will now appear. There it is. And we have our PDF, just like that. You don't even realize you're calling APIs. All the difficult work is done for you behind the scenes. So it's meant for humans, right? Like a human can understand and use this whether they know Python or not. There is no need to know Python to be able to run this function. And there are many other of these wrapper functions for APIs. This is one of the more complicated ones, and you see how simple it is. So if this is complicated, the other ones are less complicated somehow. So now let's get into some new features. So these features are all available as of 0.8.0. Actually, as of yesterday, we're up to 0.8.9. So we're moving pretty fast here. So a lot of focus has been given to the semantic model, not just by me in this library, but just in general, as far as automation is considered. And that's now about to change. So I'm introducing here what's called the report wrapper, and we'll see what that allows us to do. And just before we get into this, so you know, the report wrapper requires that the report be in the PBIR format. The PBIR format is a format that's currently in preview. It will, in the not so distant future, become GA, at which point all reports, when opened, will become in this PBIR format. So if you're thinking to yourself, well, none of my reports are in PBIR format, so this is useless, I can just kind of sign off. First of all, you can actually convert your report into PBIR format quite easily from Power BI Desktop. As I said before, in not so distant future, really all reports, all used reports will be in PBIR format. So this will then be applicable to everybody. Again, this is built for the future, not for the past. So let's see what it does. So here I have a report, and this is just a demo report. Do not copy the style. So just used for kind of hacking away for my testing purposes. But it's in PBIR format nonetheless, so we can use it for our demo here. So we just call report wrapper, specify the report name and workspace name. And once we do that, we have access to all of this metadata. So we can see what are all the pages in my report and what are their properties. Is the page hidden? Is it active? What's the width, height, all those different properties. And not just standard properties, but also more sophisticated properties. For example, how many visuals on the page, how many data there's on the page, how many visible visuals are on the page. These are things just looking at the metadata you wouldn't know. You have to count them up. And that's all done for you. Not just the pages, what are all the visuals? All the visuals on all the pages and their properties. And there are actually so many properties here that you can't see them all in a single data frame. You'll see the ... in the middle. It actually shows that there's actually even more columns and more properties than this one data frame can show on a screen. What are all the report filters? What are all the page filters? What are all the visual filters? Now we have access to see all this information without opening up the report in desktop or in the web. We can see all the visual objects. For example, we can see that a particular measure or column is used in a particular visual. Is it an implicit measure? Is it using a spark line? Is it using the visual calculation? Does it have visual formatting on it? We can see all these things immediately. What are the custom visuals in my report, and are they actually used in the report? Do I have any report level measures? In this case, this report doesn't. What are all the bookmarks? Have we edited any of the visual interactions? So we can see all this metadata immediately now without opening up desktop or Power BI in the web. Now comes, what can we do with this, right? Can we actually take any actions on these reports? The answer is yes. So let's give a scenario where we have a bunch of reports and company says, we want to introduce a new theme for all our reports. We have hundreds of reports. We want to make all those reports using a new theme. If you want to do that manually, you have to open up desktop, which takes some time to load. Then load the theme file into your report, save it, publish it, and repeat that process until your eyes start to bleed. That's not fun. So, and those days are gone, thankfully. So what we have here is in our lakehouse, we have 2 theme files. And so, you can also take theme files from online sources like GitHub or any kind of URL. You can load them from there too. In this case, I have them here in my lakehouse. So just call report rpt set theme, specify the theme file path, in this case, the default lakehouse. And we're going to change this report to be in dark mode. Go to our report, just like that. It's in dark mode. Let's now change it to light mode. Run it. Just like that. It's done. And the beautiful part about this with Semantic Link is that you can not just do this for one report, but you can loop through all the reports in a workspace. You can loop through all the workspaces that you have access to and wipe it clean. So all of those reports are using a particular theme. So in literally the time it takes you to open up desktop and change one theme for one report, you could clean house and have all reports, all 100+ reports done with this click of a button. It's very simple, but very powerful. Like this would save someone hours and hours, days of horrible manual monotonous work. So this is one of these action functions. There are additional ones as well. We won't get into all of them today, but yes, question.
You set certain properties instead of the whole theme, like title or subtitles, colors.
Well, what's the question?
Can you set using this Semantic Link Labs?
Can you set titles or subtitles? There are no functions for that as of yet, but we certainly could do that. You're welcome to go onto GitHub and request new features. Just open an issue and request new feature. We take feedback very seriously. So if there are ideas that you think are valuable, and I think that's a very good one, I like your idea, to definitely take it up.
Thanks.
This is just the beginning, right? We made a few of these functions. They're simple but powerful, and there will be more. So, and if you provide different ideas that are valuable to you, those will be prioritized to come from customers. So here's another scenario. You have a semantic model and maybe one or several downstream reports. You open up your model, you change a measure name or two, and you're just hoping that you didn't break any downstream reports. Because if you did, you don't know which ones and you don't know where. Let's see how we solve that using Semantic Link Labs. We open up our report wrapper, get that set, a new function called list semantic model objects. Here we can see all the semantic model objects and where they're used in the report. If they're used as part of a report filter, a page filter, a visual filter, or a visual, we can see which object is used and where it's used. So as an example, we know that the class column from the dim product table is used in this visual on the main page, and the visual GUID is this here. So we know specifically where that's used. We can set the parameter extend equals true, and when we do that, we actually map the report back to the upstream model and figure out if that let's go back just a bit, if that object is actually in the semantic model or not. If it's a valid semantic model object or not. If it is, it's true. You want it to be true. If it's false, it means the report is broken. So this is for one report. But what if you have a model which has multiple downstream reports? Here we can use this function. So instead of specifying the report, specify the model. This finds all the downstream reports and does the same thing the previous function did, just for all those reports. So we can specify extend equals true again, and we can see that everything is true in the last column, which means that the report is not broken, everything is fine. Well, let's break the report. So we're actually here going to connect to Tom, the tablet object model, using connect semantic model, and we're going to specify read only equals false. So we're actually going to make changes to our semantic model. And we're going to just change a measure name from sales amount to sales amount 2. And this is actually changing the model, right? So we're making a change via XMLA and the Tom wrapper to our model. And if this measure is using those reports, then it'll break it. So let's find out. Run this function again. And we can see that we now have places where this is false. And where is it? Where you're using the sales amount measure. So to figure this out manually would take you quite a bit of time of manual work. Now you can open this up, call this function, and immediately you can see what's broken in a report, if it's broken, and where it's broken. And you can see that the report actually is broken, and what's broken in the report corresponds exactly to what shows in that function. We can come back to our notebook, and let's just do a little cleanup here. So we're going to fix it using the same function, and we'll run this function again, and just let's see if everything is back to normal after fixing that one measure name. As you can see, everything's back to true. And if we open up the report, we can see that it's working again, and everything is working properly, just as the function told us. Now, what? Question? No? Yes?
Oh, we rename it. Can we? So can we use the code to update it everywhere else once it's renamed? So that it's not broken?
So we're updating the model here. We're not updating the report. You can make any change you want to using the TOM, like the tablet object model inside of Semantic Link Labs. You can make any change you want to the model. The report is more limited right now, just with these few specific functions that will change in the future. But we just changed the model, not the report.
I understand, but is it like expected to have this functionality?
To have what functionality?
Well, I rename my measure, it breaks 20 reports. I want these reports to be fixed using this library.
If you change the measure name in the report, like in desktop, or then it'll automatically fix it. But if the model is kind of disconnected from the report and you have like it's called like a thin report, then if you change the model in, say, another tool, then the report will break. And this happens all the time. I mean, ideally, you would align this at the beginning, but inevitably this happens. Like you say, oh, we misnamed this measure, or we spelled something wrong, and we want to now change it, and then your downstream users of the reports are all out of luck. So this is a way to fix that, proactively.
So it doesn't replace the measure killer. It's measure killer on top.
So we went over a model best practice analyzer.
Sorry, I just have one question for the report part. If for X reason we want to take a copy of the report, is that possible?
There's a function to clone a report in the library, and there's also a function to get the report definition. So you can either take the definition down, or you can clone the report. Say you want to essentially clone this report to a different name in a different workspace. You can do that very easily.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Michael,
just look.
I would like to ask a question.
Sure.
Mohammed. According to the copy, for example, I copy the report and I move it to I save it in another workspace. Okay. And by accident, for example, it was a typo in the measure, and I change it, or whatever column name I change it, and affected the copy. I will be able also to run this function, and it will be also override the original report and the copy, or I need to do it per report.
So we just modified a measure name in the model. We're not modifying. We didn't modify the report for that standpoint, just the model. So in that case, when you modified the model's measure name, any reports that are connected to that model would then be affected by it, whether for good or for bad.
Even when I save as in a different workspace, and
Yeah, if you cloned the report to a different workspace, it's still tied to the original model, right? You have report A, you make report B, it's still tied to the model. Yeah.
Okay. I faced this 2 weeks ago. I save a copy in different workspace. Then I did a change in the data set and the report, and I republished. And the other report, it's broken. So I deleted and and I create another copy. So
that's because the original model and report were probably part of the same file. So if you republished to say the report A and report B are not connected. There's no connection between reports. There's connection between a report and a model. So just because if you change a report, no other reports are impacted by that. If you change a model, any downstream report is impacted. Make sense?
Yes, makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. So no, we're kind of at time here. It's going to try to be very, very quick, but and just keep me honest if we have a few minutes to go over, or if we want to wrap it up early. But real quick, we made a model best fit analyzer. What about the report? We have one for the report as well, with a set of default rules. The default set of rules leverages a set of rules I created for a tool called Report Analyzer, which I released some time ago. In addition, it doesn't just have those rules by default. It also tells you like broken reports. So if we come back here and we see these error prevention rules, these are all the same issues that we saw previously, those broken visuals. So you actually don't even have to run those other functions. You can just run the BPA, report BPA, and it will tell you if you have broken reports, and if so, where. And like with the model BPA, you can also create your own custom rules if you want to. So here we see that this report is actually broken. And it has these 8 areas where it's broken. And those areas are actually the same that we had in the previous demo, where we had sales amount 2 instead of sales amount. So again, we're going to come in here using Tom and update sales amount 2 to be sales amount. And when we do so, we'll see that we can actually fix some of these issues here in real time. Without leaving the notebook, we can fix our model and report. So you see, those 8 error issues are all gone. We also have this issue here called avoid setting show items with no data on columns. So this is a property that really should never be used. So we have a way to actually remove that property from being used across all the visuals in your report. It's simple as running this function. Disable show items with no data. You run it. It disables that for all the visuals if it's set, and you rerun the BPA, and you can see that those 2 violations at the top are now gone. So we've actually fixed our report, cleaning it up without opening up the report at all. So not only can you see these violations, but you can actually fix them here in the notebook too. And this is the last demo here. When you are optimizing a semantic model, one place to get started is looking at what is the measure with the worst performance. But that's only really half the story. You probably want to measure, you want to optimize the measure with the worst performance that's also used the most. And how do you know if it's used the most? You now have this new function where this will actually scan all of the downstream reports for a given semantic model, look which objects are used, like columns or measures in those particular, all those reports across all of the pages and all the visuals and visual filters, page filters, report filters, count it all up, including dependencies, and give you this data frame, which tells you, as an example, the most commonly used column from your model in its downstream reports is the color column. It's used 21 times, either used directly or indirectly. And you have a side of these kind of Vertipac statistics, so you can see if this column is a large column, small column. If you have a very large column that's used very frequently, it may indicate why performance is not as good. And you also have information about what are the most commonly used measures. So you know there's a tie for first between order quantity and sales amount, that they've both been referenced 8 times in the downstream reports. And if you want to optimize, you would take into account not just which measure has the worst performance, but that here are the ones that are used the most. And yeah, with that, I'll take more questions.
There was one question in the chat, but I think you answered it already. It was, does Semantic Link interact mainly with the REST APIs of Power BI or with other APIs as well?
Power BI, Fabric APIs, and also some Azure APIs. And yeah, that's the focus.
Graph API from like Azure and Ready?
Not yet, but that'll probably be, it's on the list. So.
Any further questions? Calling once, calling twice. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any further questions. Michael, thank you very much for the insight of Semantic Link Labs. It was very, very useful. Just thinking about how to implement it in my daily work. And yeah, any last words?
Yeah, I mean, I think hopefully you've seen that this is, you do not need to know Python to be able to get value from this. And really, there are tools out there that are useful for a few components, but there are really no other tools out there that kind of have all these keys to the castle. Like when you think about model metadata, model BPA, report metadata, report BPA, Vertipac statistics, access to all the like the Power BI and Fabric APIs, access to like the Python libraries of translation, all these different things. This combines like all those things in one. So it's extremely powerful, and I think it can help a lot of Power BI folks in their daily work and make things that previously were very challenging, took a long time, to make them take just a few seconds.
Great. Perfect. Then thank you very, very much. I would say let's then hand over to the next speaker. Pascal, your turn.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
I'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. It's always difficult to speak after such a session. I've actually seen Michael's session before in person. And whenever I see it, I feel like running home and playing around with Semantic Link Labs for the rest of the day. Unfortunately, today I have something else to do. So I'm here today to present to you well, a bit of a different topic than we just saw before. Let me try to find out what I'm dealing with today by asking you a few questions. By raise of hands, who has heard about Power BI embedded before? Everybody in the room, good. And who knows what Power BI embedded is and how it works?
Partially.
Not too many people. My third question would be, who really knows how it works? Huh? And then I can basically skip the last question, because the last question would be, who feels ready to sit down and implement an embedded solution? And then normally there's not many hands up there anymore. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about embedded analytics in general, but because this is the Fabric user group, of course, we're going to be focusing on how it's done with Power BI. Just a little bit about myself. My name is Pascal. I have been presenting here before, so I know a lot of the people that are sitting with me in the room in Zurich. I run a company called BI Samurai. This is not the topic of today. This is where we do everything in and around Power BI and Fabric. Today, really, I want to talk about embeddC, which is a new company currently being founded. And luckily this time I have a co-founder. That makes quite a big difference. So I'm founding this company together with Vlad. We've met actually before 2022, but 2022 is the first time we actually met in person. We've been working on several BI projects together, and yeah, started talking about Power BI embedded and why not many companies and people are using it, because it's such a powerful tool. So what we did is we locked ourselves into a co-working for a couple of days, and we're trying to find out how embedded works. And I can tell you it's quite a steep learning curve. Because when you want to learn Power BI, there's a massive community. There's hundreds of blogs and YouTube channels and everything. If you want to learn about Power BI embedded, you're more or less limited to the Microsoft documentation. So yes, in the beginning, we were struggling a bit to find the right information. By now, we made a couple of contacts in the Power BI embedded team directly at Microsoft, so we can reach out to them and take a bit of a shortcut if we need to find an answer. So yes, we decided to really dig into embedded. I had a couple of, let's call it workshops together, where we mainly were just drawing on a whiteboard, because embedded is not really only Power BI development itself is exactly the same. So when you do an embedded solution, this is pure software development in the end. So you need to really think what your navigation looks like, what colors you want to use, what font, how buttons should be arranged, where to put them, who has access to what. So there's a lot of additional things we need to think about. So our days were mainly, yeah, standing there and drawing the board and brainstorming and doing a bit of research. And at the same time, of course, then also we started developing and digging into it and looking to find a good solution. In the beginning of 2024, we went live with what we call the embeddC portal. We had the first paying customers, which was a very nice event, of course, for us. And we also hired, we have our main developer on the right-hand side of the picture, Emmanuel, who is helping us out developing the whole thing, because we come from a BI background. We're data people, let's say. We're not developers, not software developers. So we needed somebody that really knows how to do the development of the actual tool. And a couple of freelance developers as well. And that doesn't mean that the two of us, the founders, are now just relaxing and laying back. It happens from time to time. I think it's quite the opposite now that we really officially started with the new company and with developers and paying customers. It's quite the opposite. So it's rare that we can sit down and relax. It's even more work than when we started off. But getting a bit easier because we know our way around by now. But yeah, enough about me and what we do. Let's dig into embedded analytics and what it actually means. So generally, not speaking about Power BI embedded, general embedded analytics. Anybody using embedded analytics?
13.
One.
At least in Teams.
I would say, yeah, in Teams. So let me ask you a couple of other questions. Anybody here has a bank account? Does sports or exercise? Maybe has a sports watch or something? Or is on social media? Because if you can answer yes to any of those, and I think most of us do, then in one way or another, you're using embedded analytics. So here, 3 screenshots from my smartphone, 3 different apps. I have on the left my banking app. So there's the stock price, the Microsoft stock price, obviously I took, and that's embedded. So it's analytics sort of embedded into my app. Then we have social media, so I can see the number of visitors on the BI Samurai. Should have taken the embedded LinkedIn page, but anyway, the BI Samurai LinkedIn page. And then I think on the right is like Apple Fit or whatever. So that's embedded analytics. But me as a user, I have no control over it. So I don't even know, well, on this app here, let me see, I have a new pointer if that will work. Oh, look at this. So what I can do is I can switch from a weekly view to a monthly view, and I can do a little bit of that. But do I know how this is calculated? Can I change like the chart type? Can I add calculations? Do I really know what's in there? Not really. So I need to really trust that what they show to me is correct. So I think everybody's using a bit of it. If we look at embedded analytics on Wikipedia, well, the description is, I underlined what I think is important. It says that it's integrating analytics into other tools and software. So with my bank app, I could actually purchase Microsoft stock, so I can actually act on it, but I have analytics in the same place. So it avoids switching between the BI tool, the data tool, and whatever other tool it may be, the ERP or CRM or whatever other tool. So we, as regular Power BI people, we do that on a daily basis. We look at the data in the Power BI report, and then we act on the data in some other tool. And that's really the difference here. The same question like before, but this time really looking at work. Are we using embedded analytics in our work? Probably less than we do in our private apps on our smartphone. There might be a bit of embedded analytics in our ERP, CRM, most of the time quite limited. And also, we're not fully in control or not in control at all how it is displayed and what is really displayed. But what does that even look like? So again, I think at least in the room, everybody has heard about Power BI Embedded. What does it look like? And I'm just going to show, of course, one example, because again, it's software development. It could look like, could be anything. So one important thing is that because it's embedded, it could be embedded anywhere. It could be an app on your phone, it could be a website, it could be embedded in any kind of software, more or less. So, and this is the Embed portal. So it's fully branded. So we're not logging into app.powerbi.com. We're logging into your custom domain, whatever you're choosing. And we define the look and feel. We also talk a little bit later also about how to authenticate and log in and making sure everything is nice and secure. But I'm just logging in with a demo user, which only has read access. So getting into my portal, and then I have a custom navigation on the left-hand side, where I have different reports, which are, well, still loading. And basically, only the report part is what's Power BI. Everything in and around it is developed exactly the way you like. And of course, you know how it is, right? When you demo, let me just refresh that.
This part outside the report is done also with Power BI embedded?
Sorry, say again?
This part outside the Power BI report is also Power BI embedded? Or is
No, this could be any development, any programming language. So this is Next.js. It's only the iframe. So basically this is Power BI, where we get the iframe, a little container, let's say, that contains the visuals and the reports. It could also be single visuals or paginated reports. In our case today, regular Power BI reports. Everything around custom design, but still, we still use the Power BI embedded APIs, for example, to fetch the names of the reports, or if we go into a report to see what pages we have. So there is an interaction between the app and the embedded part. Yeah, so we really embed what's coming, the whole report, but we also really need to deal with the metadata that we need to retrieve. So yeah, we have like a custom navigation. We defined really the logo up here. There's a little full screen button. There's a couple of options in here. But that was just a brief overview as one example what this might look like. Good. So yes, as mentioned, we started digging into that 2 years ago, well, nearly 3 years ago. So of course, we also needed to find out if there was a market for that, Power BI embedded in general. So what we did was a couple of case studies. So let me tell you why somebody would want to use embedded. So in our case studies, one reason, of course, is that you can brand the portal. We all love the Power BI service, but as a viewer, you might be confused with all the options and settings that you have, and Fabric does definitely not make that easier, right? So, and you have branded. You log into Microsoft software, so you can. I always bring the deployment pipelines as one example. Everybody sees the deployment pipeline button. Viewers don't even know what it is, right? And there's a lot of options that they might click that you don't have the license for and all that kind of thing. So that's one big reason to make it branded and maybe even to make it simpler. So I guess in the room, we need most of the functionality that we have in Power BI. A lot of the viewers, they would be happy to just look at their data. Another reason is licensing. It can be cheaper, doesn't necessarily have to be cheaper. So technically, you can do embedded, obviously with an embedded capacity, but it also works on any fabric. Not saying you should use an F2 and have hundreds of people using an embedded solution. It will definitely not be a fun experience. But technically, yes, if you have a limited number of users, nicely optimized semantic models, not too many background operations running in Fabric, technically, yes, an F2 would work. And people consuming reports in embedded don't need to have a pro license. And yeah, we all know, or some of us know, the pro licenses will increase. I think it's April or May next year. From 10 to 14, which is quite an increase. Huh? So another use case could be what I meant before, that of course, people don't want to switch between one app and another. And the nice thing really with embedded is we could add additional functionality into an embedded solution or embed analytics into an existing solution, if that existing solution gives us sort of an interface to do that. And yeah, the last case study we did was the outcome was that Power BI embedded is just a bit cooler than regular Power BI.
Did you use it like in the internet for any customer? I know like NZZ does this, and also some banks do it. For visualization that is used by whatever user connects to the internet side of them.
Yes, it can be done. So in this case, the case I showed you, we have like a login, but you can make it public, and you can also embed single visuals. So to make it nice on a website, you might not want to embed a report, because if you embed a whole report, you just use publish to web, right? You don't want to get into embedding. When you just get the publish to web, you embed the entire report as an iframe. Simple. But if you want to embed single visuals, maybe to make it nice, then you embed it. We can embed reports, paginated reports, visuals, dashboards, dashboard tiles. And I was told that real-time analytics should be coming up at one point. But anyway, so this is a bit how embedded works. And when we look at this, everything from the left up until the Power BI service is exactly the same. So I still use Power BI Desktop to connect to my data, cloud or on-prem. I create my data model, create a report, and I even create the same row level security roles and publish to a workspace. From a Power BI development point of view, exactly the same. The difference is on the right-hand side. So on the right-hand side, let's start with the app viewer. So the person consuming the data is logging into a different tool, platform, URL, website, whatever it is, and logs in with, it can be Microsoft login. It could also be a social login, like Gmail login, like GitHub login. What else do we have? Facebook login. You can create your own login mechanism with just username, password, or you make it completely public. So how the users log into the app is part of the app. But what is happening then is that via, and now we go back to what we heard before also, Power BI REST API, we authenticate with Power BI using a service principal. Let's call it a technical user that must be added to the workspace with at least member rights. So Power BI only knows that the service principal comes in. Power BI doesn't know which user exactly and how they logged in to the portal. Still, row level security works, but the portal, the software, needs to control that row level security works. But we can get separate access tokens depending on what the user should have access to.
That's basically a delegation of the user ID. You pass in a user ID or a user ID group or so, in addition to the service user which authenticates.
Yes. So from a Power BI point of view, it's always the same user that accesses the reports.
Can you pass then the row level security if it's the same user?
So there is an API for the row level security. So the app controls you when you develop, you control somewhere in your backend of the app that you can assign users a specific role that you need to do in the app. But once you have it done in the app the correct way, the embedded API makes sure that that user only gets the correct data. So that's always a bit of a mix, huh? A lot of the logic happens in the app. Power BI more or less only just gives you the iframe that the user should see.
If I may, technically speaking, you're calling the API in the body context. You can pass the user which is logged in the custom app, Power BI, because you're logging in and passing it to the RLS role, you get what this user can see.
And it works with both. It works with static RLS and it works with dynamic RLS. So RLS, let's just say fully supported. Technically, it's a bit of a technical detail. Technically, you could also pass filters and only limit the values of the data that's shown via filters, that's just not fully secure. If you do RLS, then we trust RLS as we just do. Technically, you could pass filters via the app. That's just not the fully secure way of doing it. Good. So, yeah, again, what does that even look like? So I'm navigating to the Power BI Embedded Playground, a very good starting point if you want to learn how to use embedded. What we can do here is I can try the developer playground, and I can use a sample report, or I can also connect to one of the reports in my tenant. So I'm logged in here, and then I get a couple of my workspaces, and let me just open up this report here. So what we see here is this part would be what I show in my embedded solution. That's the result that I want to show. Up here, we have all that code that manages and makes sure that I only see what I want to see. And on the left-hand side, I have a list of most of the Power BI embedded APIs. So it starts with authorization. The nice thing here is Microsoft is taking care that in the playground, you don't need to deal with embed tokens and embed URLs and all that kind of stuff. So this is all pre-populated and it just works. So this is really to learn how to use the APIs themselves. Let me try to find a few things in this code. What I want to do is let's hide the filter pane. Maybe my embedded solution, I don't want to show the filter pane to the user. So somewhere in here, I define that I want to import or show a report and not a single visual. And then there's a couple of settings here. So in the settings, we have the panes, and then I have the filter pane, which currently is set to true. So if I just change that to false and run the code, filter pane disappears. Similar with the pages. If you do an embedded solution, you probably want your page selection to fit in from a look and feel point of view with your app. So it would make sense to hide the page navigation. So also here I can say, change this to false, run, and I don't have the page navigation anymore. But how would I now add my own page navigation? To do that, I need to know how many pages I have, which ones are visible, what are their names, and that kind of thing. So I would go into the APIs and search for something with page. And then we have an API called get pages. Sounds about what we want to see. So let me just scroll down in the code, because that's really how I can play around with that. I can just drag and drop code pieces and then run the code again. And we will see that absolutely nothing changed, even though I added this. Because what's happening here, that's also very common in development, in web development, that you add information to the logs. So what we now added is the report pages to the browser logs. And we added the page name and the page display name. So we have the technical name and the name that I created in desktop. We all know the technical name. That's also what you see in the URL. When you open up a report in the service and you navigate between pages, you get that report section, blah, 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 and then a number that you don't know what that is. It's the same thing. So with this information here, that's exactly what we would do. We would, in a call, get the page names and then populate the custom menu with those names. And when a user clicks, then we still need to add the report set name. So the report set name event is what then really takes us to a specific page. Let's say I want to go to page 7. So I would copy this code, paste it in here. And now let's focus. Let me close that again. So let's see, this page is has a bluish color kind of thing. And when I run this, we should get to a different, very different page. So it's very clearly that this now worked. And that's more or less how this works. So it's not only getting the right APIs, but really figuring out how the navigation should be, what it should look like, how I want people and users to interact with it. Let's leave it at this in the playground for now. Let me show you a bit what this looks like in real. The playground, still a bit of an easy way. It's nice to learn and it's very helpful, but in real, it's of course a bit more difficult. So what I did for today is I deployed a second version or demo version, a temporary one for today, nicely branded for the Fabric user group. And let me just log in here and then let's try to make a couple of changes in here. We see that this is deployed in Azure. When I want to make changes, I would do that locally. I cannot make a change and straight away see it and deploy it. It would just simply take too long. So opening up my GitHub desktop here. I'm connected to the embed-C repository, and then let's see what we have in here. And very soon I'll be ready for a question or two, because what I'm doing now will take 2 minutes. So what I'm doing now is I'm starting with Yarn Dev. I'm starting a local environment. So this is now, let's say, creating a local web server that will then display my app. And this just takes a minute. So if there's any questions, that would be a good time now.
I have a question. I know that in Power BI service, if you go file and then embed the report, there is some simple way to get a code to embed the report.
Yes.
I think it's quite limited compared to what.
So you have, I think it's called secure embed. And secure embed, you can get then that iframe and embed it anywhere you like on your website. But everybody will have to log in and needs to have a pro license.
Which are the limitations on the function, maybe, sorry, which are the limitations on the functionality? Because I know you can put some parameters in the URL. So for example, show or not show something. How much limited it is, or which functionality are available?
First of all, not everyone needs a pro license. If you have a capacity, free license.
Sorry, yes, of course. From a okay, from an F64 up, you don't need a pro license, of course.
Yes. But yeah, limitations. The secure embed. Everything that you can do through a URL is supported more or less. So like, yeah, pass filter or whatever. But that's it. You cannot really customize it like with Power BI embedded, the real API stuff, let's say, because over there you can really customize everything. And the biggest difference, as he mentioned, is the login mechanism. With secure embed, you need to log in. We make sure that you have to log in. With Power BI embedded, you can choose how you wish to authenticate. You can also use secure embed, so you can also enforce people to log in with their credentials and Microsoft account. I haven't seen that so far, honestly. Or using service principal, and then you do on top what you wish.
We're using UBS, secure embed.
Well, but then usually you embed it somewhere internally, like in an intranet website, SharePoint. Then okay, I get that. But if you have a public-facing website, you don't do that. Yeah, that's the biggest thing, right?
Good. So that was a good timing. So my local environment is now running, and let me show you how we can do a few changes here. Let me try something simple. Let me change some. Let me just change some text. So let me change the word portal configuration to, I don't know, portal settings. That should be simple because somewhere in my code, and let me close that, that's cheating, so it's easier to find. This is the entire code here with hundreds of thousands of files that makes sure that this portal basically does what it does. If I search for portal configuration, I get it in several places, but it looks like it should be the one that is in the file user dropdown. At least it sounds a bit like it. So let me just change that to portal settings. And save. And when I go back to my app, it's already here. Now it already says portal settings. Simple change. If I know I want to change a word, I'll change it in the code. Of course, what you can do is also you can give that decision to the user. So maybe I want this to change from dashboard to reports or something. So of course, what can be done is now in the portal settings, you add a field and make something dynamic. So and that's what we're doing. We're trying to give a lot of options to the users, not to every user, but to the admins of a portal. So they can just, for example, it's a small little change, but maybe they want to have a different icon or a different color or whatever it is, right? So basically anything is in code, meaning you can change anything. What I would like to do is, because we talked about page navigation and how we normally hide the navigation, and we do the same. Let's see if we can also manage to bring the page navigation, which would be somewhere down here, back. So what I would normally do is I need to find out what I'm looking for. And we saw it before, somewhere in here, there was settings, panes, page navigation. So I'm expecting to have the word page navigation in the code and change it to true. Well, guess what? There's no such thing as page navigation in the code. Yeah, so we get the APIs. There's different APIs, so different languages. It's JavaScript, TypeScript. You can use different languages to call them. There's also SDKs, software developer kits, and then for whatever reason, they have slightly different names. So for the page navigation, let me see if I will find it. It's somewhere in. Let me see. No. Page. Views, apps, Power BI iframe. That's where a lot of the magic happens in terms of calling the Power BI APIs. And somewhere in here, I'm looking for the word nav content pane enabled, similar to page navigation. Change this to true. Then hopefully, not here, but let me move my teams. And now we get the page navigation. So that's really, it's mostly software development. And a tiny little bit of it is actually calling the right APIs at the right time. Good. What else do we have? Live code change done. Nothing too fancy. We're not software developers here. A few words about the infrastructure. Technically, that software can be deployed anywhere. You could have it deployed on your local server in your basement if you want to do that. In our case, we decided to do everything in Azure. So there's an app service running, there's a SQL database running just for the user access and defining which role has access to what reports and that sort of thing. The storage account for the icons and the fabric capacity, obviously. And yeah, that's from a technical point of view, what is really needed to get this going. And I know I need to come to an end soon. And I think...
One question, do we still need WebView 2 for that?
This still requires WebView 2 runtime. I don't know. Probably. I don't know. Yeah,
Me
I don't know. So, I don't know.
Me neither. Let's say yes.
Bro, yeah, let's use that.
No, we don't.
I'm also not sure. No. Oh, and I see you answered the other questions. Fantastic. So what's the plan for 2025 and beyond? So one of the big plans is to embed other BI tools into the same platform. So Tableau is the next thing we want to add. I don't know if I'm allowed to share that here, but so Power BI embedded, yeah, that was for us the obvious first choice because we're Power BI people. But hey, is there another platform that does Power BI and Tableau in the same? I don't know, maybe. I don't think so. So Tableau would be next. We also have a customer that wants to add file sharing into the app. Like that's, you know, an interesting use case. It could be used by other people as well. So always happy to hear custom requirements. And then if it's not too wild, it can be embedded into the default in the core app. If it's a bit too niche and too specific, then it would be standalone, but file sharing will be added. And we already have the storage account, so probably we can reuse that and add a bit of functionality. From a technical point of view, not super complicated, but really how it should be integrated from a user point of view. Who should have access? Where do I show? That is in many cases the more difficult part than the doing itself. Integration with other apps, Salesforce, Slack, Zapier, lots of small little things that we're planning to do. And then, well, everybody is doing a bit of AI. I don't know the specific use case, but you sort of have to do a bit of AI. So yeah, but with a question mark, because first we need to hear a good idea. A little bit of AI needs to be in there. And yeah, that was it from my side. I think there's a hand up somewhere.
Really, yes.
Quick question. How did you, because I joined a bit late, how did you do the embedding of different reports within your environment? Would be one question. And the other thing is, I've seen you using the settings, right? That's basically a constant in the background. Would it maybe make sense to integrate some basic features like that then as well into your, let's say, application for administrative purposes, but you don't have to go through the code and adjust it there?
Yes. So that reminds me of something I wanted to show. Because, yes, so we can hard code certain things, but we really want to also leave certain settings to the users. And I was happy when Michael showed that before about the dark mode. Right, so there's also, and I'll get to the other question about the report soon. Some things we want to hard code. We want to say, don't show pages, but changing from light to dark mode, for example, might be something you want to give to the user. So that's what we try to implement here. So the user defines what they want to see, and you could do that with any setting in here. You either define it or, and if you give it to the user, you still need to define what user role should be able to do what. And that's really when it becomes quite tricky to keep track of what you have. It's already tricky in the Power BI service when we talk about authorization. I think we have 4 different roles on workspaces. We can give direct access to semantic models, to reports, and we can use apps and we can share from. There's so much when it comes to that. And they have more people thinking about what they should do. So that really is quite tricky. And how we get reports into the app is, so we need to add the service principal to the workspace or workspaces that should be that contain the reports that should be shown, at least with a member. And then with that, we use another API call to access those workspaces, to read what reports are in there. And then we basically have a bit of a backend configured here where me as an admin, I can define roles and who should have access to what and who should be able to refresh semantic models and so on. So that's what I would, but that's up to us to define that backend here.
Okay. So from what I understand, Pascal, is you're basically listing, through the admin API, you're basically retrieving the workspaces or the artifacts which should be shown in the app.
Yes,
right?
I basically get the list of all the workspaces where this service principal has access to, and then as soon as I selected one, I get all the reports from that specific workspace.
Okay, nice one. Okay.
But that's very custom. That's really.
Yeah. I mean, you have to retrieve a list somewhere, and the worst thing would be to put report IDs somewhere and store them in a table. So that's the obvious thing, right, to do that with.
Yeah, but that's a good point, because what happens if you delete the report in the workspace? What happens in the app? So you really need to think about all these things that could happen. If somebody renames or deletes or moves, what should happen in the app? So yeah, super powerful, super complicated, but it's also fun. Yeah.
Any other questions?
The last one from me. I tried.
Not?
So what you offer in the end is just is this portal. So companies can buy the portal and the report inside, or you offer like consulting for you?
Oh, I don't want to turn this into a sales pitch now, huh?
I asked the question, so I think that you have a lot.
So it's my main goal was to talk a bit how embedded really works, because everybody has heard about it, but how it really works, it's difficult to really see. We offer the portal as a solution with custom development. So, for example, that file sharing mechanism, we were super happy when somebody said, can we do file sharing? Because that's something that everybody uses, some sort of file sharing. So we'll try to add this into the core functionality of it. But because we also start to do a bit of being active on social media when it comes to embedded and stuff, some people start to reach out and they have their own solution, but they have questions. So we do a bit of consulting as well, but the core is really developing our own, because it's taking enough time. So doing a bit of support, yes, but the own solution is the main focus. Good. Thank you very much for
Looks like no other questions.
having me.
No other questions? No.
Apps that are local. It's on the cloud.
I would never want to answer an SAP question, because SAP doesn't really allow much when it comes to it. I don't know. They want to use SAP Analytics. I don't know. I don't know.
In theory, yes, for let's say usual apps or environments, SAP, I would also say no. But from a technical point of view of Power BI, yes.
Oh yes, it's because really the important thing is that the app where you embed interacts with the report. So you might want to filter something in your app, and the report knows that filter. And that's just because only embedding the full iframe as a report, it's still not really embedding, because there's no context in between. And that's to have it contextual. The app you want to integrate to needs to give you certain information that you can reuse.
All right, looks like really no other questions. Thank you very much.
One last comment. What I wanted to add potentially. Is it as well possible to run it as embed for your organization? Let's say that you can also authenticate against your app with Entra ID. And
So there's basically two kinds of embedded. Yes, there is and today we focused on app owns data, so embedding for customers, which means your employees could use it as well. So yes, you could use such an app and use your regular Entra user to authenticate. So if you use Entra, which we, for example, use to sign out, let me go to the login page.
I need to interrupt.
Yes.
As we really don't have the time now.
Yes,
sorry.
the answer is yes.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point it out that you can use Entra and as well, huh?
Yes,
With this
absolutely.
Good.
All right, because we have some updates if you wish to see them, and time is running a little bit out, so sorry to interrupt here, but thank you very much. Let me take over here and then walk you a little bit through the updates, because there are quite a few. So first of all, as usual, giving some updates about events. For tomorrow, if you haven't heard, there is a Fabric for Breakfast organized by Intelligent and Microsoft together, where we talk a little bit about what Fabric is. If you haven't and still have the time, and if you haven't registered, feel free to join. It's in the morning, as the name indicates, and there will be breakfast. Yes. All right. The next one is we announced the Microsoft Community Conference once more in the US, in Las Vegas. It will happen end of March, beginning of April. If you wish to join, also nice. On the other hand, if you say we wish to stay in Europe, it will also come to Europe again, this time in Vienna. In mid-September, so keep an eye on it. I think registration is not open yet, but it will be hopefully soon as well. Career Hub, as usual, I have it here just for those who haven't heard of it. It's a great platform if you wish to learn what Fabric is, how to, I don't know, do data engineering or whatever. Feel free to check it out, as there is a quite good content on top of that. One thing I wish to highlight, for those who are watching the Power BI monthly update, presented this time by Patrick, there is one community spotlight. So they always praise one community member worldwide, and this time it was Gregor. And Gregor is one member of our community as well. So we really happy to see him. I don't think if he see I haven't seen him in the call, but probably he will watch the recording. Just wanted to raise kudos to him for this great spotlight. All right, you mentioned it already. One of the updates, or one of the announcements that we did is we will start by 1st of April next year to increase the price of Power BI. It doesn't mean that every Power BI will be affected. It's for the licensing piece, so Power BI Pro license and the premium per user license. It means for Power BI Pro, we go from $10 to $14, and for premium per user, we go from $20 to $24. There will be no changes for the E5 licenses for those customers who have that, so that's as is. I see it with two little thoughts here. On one hand, yes, I can argue 40% increase, it's enormous stuff. But let's face it, we talk about $4, and the value behind Power BI, I'm not sure if you can get for $14 such value with any other BI tool. Just to keep that a little bit in mind. But yeah, don't shoot the messenger, as I put it in the message in the picture. That's just announced. Questions or comments from our pre-sales guy, Roman? Good. Okay. Moving on. I will go a little bit faster this time through all these announcements. I will not show anything here live today because most of them is quite obvious, just that you know. And this one is the Copilot now in Power BI mobile app, meaning if you're now accessing Power BI through your app or through your mobile, in the app itself, you have also Copilot to summarize, for example, a report and get some insights. Right. From the requirements point of view, still the same. You still need an F64 or above to be able to use Copilot, so this hasn't changed. Moving on. For those who haven't known, we have something that we call core visuals. Core visuals are those when you open up Power BI, the visuals that you see, these are the core visuals, so integrated into Power BI. And if you wish to provide some feedback to it, we have a LinkedIn group where you can join and provide feedback. And the LinkedIn group, they created now a so-called vision board where you can more easily find how to provide feedback and stuff. This is a little bit what we just announced. So meaning if you have feedback to the product, to the core visuals, feel free to check out here this vision board and provide it. Questions? Oh.
So is like a demo also of the new visuals?
No, I don't think so. I haven't seen it. It's really more about feedback, giving feedback. Yeah.
When you see with the vision board, that's like transparent. I see other proposals by other customers, and can I upvote proposals?
I think so. Yes, it's like really a feedback tool. Right. Then that was already from a Power BI side, not so much, but going a little bit to the announcement during Ignite, which has happened 2 weeks ago. And one of the biggest announcements from my point of view is that we support now SQL databases in Fabric. So besides warehouse, we really have now a database in there, meaning you can have transactional data floating into Microsoft Fabric and having really everything out of the box from one solution. And one of the reasons why you could also move to Fabric instead of having Azure SQL and storage accounts separately. Yeah. Just that, you know. All right. If you wish to learn about SQL DB, there is a learning series. You can register. It's 3 half days from Tuesday to Thursday. I think it starts next week or the week after, not 100% sure, but you can check out here the blog and it will walk you through what you can do everything with SQL in Fabric. The next thing that we announced is open mirroring. For those who don't know, we offer something which we call mirroring, meaning if you have like a SQL database and you wish to copy the data into Fabric, the easiest way would be mirroring. So it copies automatically everything that is in Azure SQL or other data sources into Fabric. And it's near real time, meaning if you add something new in Azure SQL, it will be replicated in almost immediately in Fabric as well. And we supported from the beginning a few data sources like Cosmos DB and Azure DB and some others. And if a data source is not supported, you can now use open mirroring and create your own solution. And what I saw is you can also use open mirroring for Excel and CSV files as an example. Quite nice. There is a GitHub repo behind, so you can check it out how that would work.
Have continuous work on both platforms. Does the data go back or
no? It doesn't go back. The replica in Fabric is a read only, and so meaning if you do change, you can even change the replica. You can just read. So the changes should happen on the original source. Right. Moving on. One-way catalog. This is more from a governance, almost security perspective. Meaning we have now one view across what you have access to. So in one catalog, where you can really see, okay, how many items do I have? For example, if you go to a semantic model, what are the tables? What are the columns there? And so on and so on. Quite a nice overview. Feel free to check it out. Workspace monitoring, also an administration point, meaning until now it was a little bit tricky to get, for example, how much consumption of a capacity you have. You can go through the metrics app, but you have just 14 days of data, for example. If you need history, there are, let's say, hacks or workarounds to export those data and save it on your own. And with this workspace monitoring, what we introduced is within a given workspace, you can create an event house, so real-time intelligence, and everything will then, from that point in time, be historized and stored into Custo database or in real-time intelligence, event house, however you're going to call it. Let's say Custo, meaning you have a history out of the box. If you know KQL, you can query it, and it's also near real-time. So you have better insights and can do much more with it instead of going through the metric set. Questions to that?
A question for the sequel. When not anymore in preview? Idea.
I don't know. I don't know. I haven't heard names, but personally, knowing how Microsoft works, I know that we have build in May. I guess till then, because usually we announce big things at conferences, and the next big conference is in May, or probably in Vegas during the community conference. Those two I would look out for. Right. Microsoft Purview, DLP policies update. This one is a nice one, meaning if you're working with sensitivity labels, and while you, for example, have a semantic model and refresh data, and in your data model, you have a column credit card information. Through DLP policies, it will be detected and labeled, for example, highly confidential data. Now you can configure that if a guest user has access to your report, to your workspace, that this guest user don't get access to it anymore. Even if he has access to the report to view it, if something is highly confidential that externals shouldn't see, it will automatically click in, and this is then the message that they will get, like access restricted. Good question. Hope it was clear. All right. Next one, this is more a private preview announcement. For those who are struggling with capacity sizing, we have a Fabric SKU estimator, which should ease up a little bit the life, meaning based on the estimator, you should know what kind of SKU size you should have based on your data load and so on. If you're interested in, feel free to check out this form or reach out to me, and we can probably invite you to the private preview for that. Questions on that? Good. All right. Then a little bit nice features, long-awaited features, I'd say. Dataflow Gen 2 finally is in public preview for CI/CD. So for those who are working with Azure DevOps or GitHub, now you can also do CI/CD for Dataflow Gen 2. And we have a new event category in Real-Time Hub. So for those who are working with Custo, real-time intelligence, in Real-Time Hub, we have like different kind of events, and 3 of them is OneLake events, job events, and capacity utilization events. This can make very, very nice use cases. For example, if you put in a file into your OneLake, that you trigger a OneLake event, and if there is a file that you start, I don't know, a processing job to get it, to analyze it, to store it somewhere else, whatever. Or capacity utilization, meaning if you reach a certain capacity utilization, please trigger an action. Please inform me, please, whatever, right? So can be very, very handy as it's in real time at the end. Then event stream, also CI/CD supported, just that you are aware of it. This is a little bit more real-time analytics. And the other one is coming from Data Factory pipelines. In there, we have 2 nice new features out of the box available now, meaning for those who haven't known, in pipelines, you have an activity to trigger refreshes for semantic models. And now you can parameterize those and also trigger partition refreshes. So not the full refresh, you can also specifically say which partition you wish to refresh through a UI, which is quite nice. And lastly, you can also now import and export data pipelines, which makes it a little bit easier to maintain and to move from one to another environment. And then we have Python. So for those who work with Python, until now we had PySpark Python, not Python. So now we have that as well. So you can switch the language and have the version 3.1 or 3.1.1, which you can use. And a few GA announcements, general availability. I'm not going through all of them, just wanted to highlight that. If you see something that you have been waited for, one of the mirroring, for example, Azure SQL is there, but yeah, as mentioned, SQL databases, I'm not sure when this will be GA. Hope soon, I guess during a big event. It will be on. Whew, that was fast. Any questions? All right, 2-3 more slides. One is for the next user group. Until now, you know that it runs every month from 4 to 6, and the next one will happen on the 9th of January. The time I specifically set to be defined, and as well the location. Before I move on, just to mention, we will have Dominic, I guess, and Severin, right?
So Severin will present.
Okay, I put your name as well because you reached out to me a little bit about InfoRiver and the beauty of it, how you can support, right? And why did I say specifically to be defined? Because I'm relying here again on the feedback of all of you. And just to show you how it looks like right now. So this is the feedback form. We have already 51 responses. And when I analyze that a little bit, okay, now we are here. When I analyze that a little bit, I see, okay, average is quite good. Quite happy with that. Looks like Thursday is a good date to go with. And from a timing perspective, it looks like we fight between 4 and 5. And further, if I scroll down, when I ask for how long, it looks like 90 minutes would be enough. And if I ask for how should we do it, monthly looks good. But this one surprises me a little bit because a lot of people ask for hybrid and in-person. And I get like 20, 30 people, yeah, we would like to come in person. And then as today, I have like 6 in the room or 7, whatever we are now. So I'm not sure what we should change here. I'm thinking of having an in-person event, not hybrid, once in a quarter and 2 online events. Probably I will force that. Therefore, I will talk with Dennis as well to see if we will change it, what we will change. But due to that, insights, I would say we will have the next user group starting at 5 and having it for 90 minutes. Probably we will start with that to see how people will react. I will also check with you if that works for you. But just as an announcement, not yet defined, not yet in stone set, but I think we will go this way, looking a little bit at the feedback. Right, once more, if you wish, feel free to fill out the forms once more and provide feedback. We're really looking into it, as you see, and we will adopt for next year then. With that, wishing you all Merry Christmas or whatever you celebrate. Wishing you all Happy New Year. Hope to see you again. And yeah, provide feedback as you see once more. Yeah, by the way, this is Dennis because he lost the ugly contest. You see the face, how sad he is. Just kidding. We need some fun in life. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Have a wonderful rest of the day. You all. All right. Stop recording. Yes. You already see us now.